Welcome back to the Move podcast. I'm JB Hager, joined by Johan Bruneel and Spencer Martin, and we've got a lot of races to cover. I mean, there's so much going on. My head is spinning. We'll get into that in just a second. Before we do that, here's Lance with a couple messages and special offers from our partners.
We've been talking about this one for years. I love how these, a lot of these, we're just avid users of this stuff. Helix Sleep has really changed the game. I know George and I, we've had our mattresses for a couple of years now.
2 years.
2 years, right? And it's the best sleep I've ever had. Here's another little twist to the story, right? They've got unique mattresses. They've got luxury models, mattresses for big and tall sleepers, and even a mattress made just for kids. Helix Sleep Kids mattresses specifically designed for kids 3 to 12 and has been awarded the best mattress winner by Parents Magazine. I mean, who doesn't want their kids to sleep? All the parents are like, whoa, yes. All you got to do is go on over and take their 2-minute sleep quiz, talk about your characteristics. They've got 12,000 5-star reviews. 12,000. Helix is offering up to $200 off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows. For our listeners, head on over to helixsleep.com/themove. Today also brought to you by Juve. This is something that I've incorporated into my daily routine. I spend about 30 minutes a day, believe it or not, when I'm at home. I do have my portable travel version, but the 6-panel that I have here at home is a game changer. You've probably seen some of that on the socials. Infrared light, it is proven to boost recovery, help performance, mental clarity, all of these things, all the way down to the cellular level. And again, that's Joovv, Joovv. They do have several different size options. You can head on over to their website and check those out. And the other thing about it is the friends that have tried it out have just loved it. It's a wild experience. So head on over to Joovv, again, joovv.com/themove and apply my code THEMOVE, that's all one word, at joovv.com/themove.
All right, I'm going to start with this. You guys watch more racing than any humans I've ever met, both of you. And I, for the longest time, even following cycling, had no idea that there is so much racing that happens in February. Like it's just kind of mind blowing. And of course, there's newer events in the Middle East and stuff like that have come along, but had no clue that this much racing takes place. And it makes me think about the teams and all the efforts all over the world to send the right squad there and the support, and pretty much mind blowing.
Yeah. I mean, logistically, the February and March for a team, it is complicated. I think, JB, that you have a point. You were not aware there was so many races. These races have always been there, but more and more races are covered. They're broadcasted. They almost every race is on TV now, or streaming TV. I think, no, I never watch TV anymore, but we can see all these races now on our devices, and
it's good for the sport in general. Just because I know a lot of people I know are watching more races than they ever have. This streaming world and all this coverage is just such a great thing for the sport.
Well, tell me if I'm misremembering this, Johan. I feel like it did not used to be, you would not have contenders coming in so fit. Like Lance Armstrong was not rolling up February 26th in Tour de France form. I think we're noticing these races more, A, because they're broadcast, and B, because guys are just so fit so early that it makes them a little bit more interesting and important.
Yeah, I mean, all the races, not even the non-World Tour events, they've been won by really big names. Now the question is, are these guys really already at the top of their game? That's the question. Some of them are that good, like Pogačar, like Vingegaard, like Alaphilippe, who won his first race this weekend. Remco Evenepoel. It would be, to me personally, I don't think that they are at the top of their game yet. They can't be. They're working towards their top shape. And of course, the rest of the peloton is too. There's very few riders who are really at the top of their form at the beginning of the season. Some of them actually work towards that because they think, okay, if I'm top of my game now, 100%, I have a chance because the others won't be. But it turns out that, guys like Vingegaard and Pogačar and Evenepoel, when they're at 80%, they're still good enough to win. And for the moment, those are the guys who are winning.
Well, go ahead.
I was going to say, as you've often said on the show, when those guys are on form, names you just mentioned, they're on another level. So if they come down to the level of the rest of the peloton, they're still the best.
Yeah. I mean, they're winning. They're winning. They're not like they are dominating too, but the differences are not huge. There's not, it's not like they show that they are the best, but the others are within reach, let's say, like if one bad day of one of those guys could be enough for them to not win the race. But I mean, these guys are just, they're so good that they can win anything.
Well, let's jump into the UAE Tour. And I think it's worked well on how we've covered this recently. We'll go stage by stage. And Spencer, if you want to give us sort of a breakdown of what went down, and then we'll go to you, Johan, for your comments on that stage. Does that sound good?
Sure.
Let's jump right in with UAE, and we'll hit some of these other spring classics before we go, and some observations you guys have made about some of the bigger teams duking it out. So let's start. A lot of sprinting went down in UAE. A lot of sprinting.
Yeah, we'll fly through some of these sprint stages. I mean, it's kind of an interesting race because it's warm, so it's like you're not so bundled up. Like the pace is high. Your body's I think your body's just like happier racing at that temperature. So you're seeing like live sprints. I mean, these are good sprinters too that are there, but we'll get through these quickly and talk about the GC. Remco Evenepoel won the overall by, I think, a minute over. Or 54 seconds over Luke Plapp, and then a minute over Adam Yates, who was third. We'll talk about how that unfolded, but I have a few questions for Johan on that. But stage one was a flat stage. You think, oh, this is just going to be a sprint. It ended up being probably the most important stage of the race. 12 hours after we wrapped up last week's podcast, where Johan said he was concerned about UAE's tactics and how they race without Pogačar. They show up, they get dropped in the crosswinds. Remco Evenepoel gets off the front with a group containing his teammate, Tim Merlier, who won the sprint for the stage, beat Mark Cavendish and one other rider that Caleb Ewan. Caleb Ewan.
Photo finish.
And Evenepoel gets, 53 seconds, I believe, on Adam Yates, who was with the whole UAE team, missed the split. They're stuck. Well,
they have been chasing the whole day. This went down from as the moment that the race was gone. It was crosswinds, and it was basically in pieces the whole day. And Remco was the guy together with Bilbao and with Bilbao and Luke Plapp, who were always in the first group, and the other guys were in the second group and the third group. Once it came back, then it split again. So I mean, day one was the decisive stage in the end.
And if you like crosswinds, I mean, this was the stage for you because, as Johan said, they were chasing all day. As they just got close enough to maybe reel them in, Evenepoel and Merlier pull a group off the front. Really savvy thing to do, because then the third group is chasing the second group, but they don't even realize that there's now a first group riding away from that second group. Mm-hmm. Luke Plapp, young Australian, two-time Australian road champion, which is really impressive at his age.
Back to back.
Yeah, he was the only rider able, it was not a big gap, just a few meters. Mm-hmm. And he's so strong. He was able to close that gap, and he was the only one able to do that. That kind of put him in good position for the GC. But Johan, did you have any thoughts on this sprint? Merlier wins it pretty decisively. I thought Cavendish was following Cesc Bol, maybe not the best position. He's starting to sprint way behind Merlier, and we've seen this year, these sprints seem so fast that it's almost like the first guy to go is almost winning every time.
Yeah, well, I mean, decisively is a big word, Spencer, because they didn't know.
There was no question on this. There was no question.
They didn't know. I mean, at some point, I think they were thinking of giving it to both, because they could not. They had to go down to magnifying the picture of the photo finish, and it came down to the pixels. Wow. And I saw somewhere it was 0.5 millimeters or something that was the difference between both. Nobody knew. Caleb Ewan claimed it, and then they didn't know, and finally Merlier got it. We're seeing this. I mean, I think this is a continuation of what we're seeing in the whole sport of cycling, even in the sprints. I mean, how many photo finishes have we seen in the last year? Or even 2 years ago when we saw between Pidcock and Van Aert in the Amstel Gold Race. Nobody knew either who had won after such a long race. So they're so close together. But first of all, I think on stage one, the decisive day, I think there it's super difficult to surprise Lotto Quickstep. Soudal Quickstep. I have to get used to this. Soudal Quickstep, formerly Quickstep, in the crosswinds. This is, arguably the best team in the world with crosswinds. And I think Remco could really take advantage of that. I think that was a really important step for him too, that he's showing that he's able to ride in crosswinds with the help of his team. But he was the only guy who was always there, So that was really good. And then it was Merlier, it was Cavendish and Caleb Ewan and Olaf Koy. I think those were the four guys. But that this is not a normal sprint, because the sprinters had to work so hard already on beforehand to make that first group. At the end of the day, we're only 15 or 16 riders in the front. So plus, in order to stay in that first group, you have to take your turn, because in crosswinds, in echelons, if you try to be at the back and you don't take a pull, you're kicked out of the echelon, because there's only one way to stay in there. Is you rotate and you take your turn. And so I think that had an impact on the sprinters, that they were, they were still up front, but they were toast. They were toast.
You mentioned Olaf Koy, and I'll note that is one of the names you mentioned in our Up and Comers show, Johan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was.
And he was a factor on stage 4 as well. I noticed he's right up there.
Yeah.
And he's 21 years old, maybe.
Yeah. He's really good rider.
And I did notice too that it maybe that on stage 1, that photo finish with Caleb Ewan and Tim Merlier, Cavendish was gaining ground. He just wasn't in the right position. Mm-hmm. Because everyone's going to be curious all season about Mark Cavendish's form, because it's a big story. But it looked like he was gaining. He just was out of place.
I personally think his form is good, JB. His form is good. He looks fit. He looks actually pretty fit for the beginning of the season. I've seen him more out of shape, visibly. But I think for the moment, the lack is the train, the team support and the people around him. I think they're going to get some of it right at some point. But I think, listen, Cavendish he still has his speed. He's gonna be up there at some point. And I personally, I'm going to make the prediction now, but I'm not worried at all for him to breaking the record in the Tour de France. Have 35 stage wins.
I'm not so. I have more questions for you about Astana later in this race.
Yeah. Okay.
I just think their lead out leaves something to be desired.
Well, he only had Kees Bol. Let's say a guy like Cavendish doesn't worry that much now about winning stages. At this point in his career, I think he has his priorities, he has his goals, and the times. Listen, this was a stage race. In 4 out of the 7 stages were bunch sprints. 2 of them were uphill finishes, and one was a team time trial. So we had 4 different winners. No, sorry, 3 different winners, because Merlier won twice. But these teams came with big sprint trains. Astana, they don't have that for the moment. They don't have it. Plus, I don't know if they were hoping that Lutsenko would maybe be a factor at the GC, so they kind of sacrificed maybe 2 or 3 riders for him to stay around him, because he's an ex-winner of this race. But Cavendish will be fine. He'll be fine.
All right, let's move on to stage 2, a team time trial. Who would have thought, if you listen to our show in the last year or two, that that EF Easy Post would be on the hot seat all day. And we've said on a previous show, they're off to a good start. Some of these teams that were in jeopardy of relegation are now looking great.
Yeah.
And that was a big deal for them to be in there and just a second off winning.
Yeah, and Soudal Quickstep, Evenepoel's team, went last, I believe, and then beat EF by a second. And they
were 10 seconds behind at the first intermediate. Soudal Quickstep.
Which, I mean, I actually kind of incomprehensible because it's an 18-minute total effort. So that means over, let's just say it's halfway. Maybe it wasn't perfectly halfway. Basically 9 minutes. In 9 minutes, you're making up 11 seconds on the team.
Yeah.
That's very difficult.
I mean, it is doable, but you're right. For a short team time trial like that, all flat. And here, I think hats off to a guy like Tim Merlier, who won stage one, who was in the leader's jersey and sacrificed himself completely on that team time trial by doing one last pull just before the last kilometer. And I think that's where, he gave everything he had and then he pulled off, knowing already that he was sacrificing his leader's jersey. But I think that pull is what gives them the win.
Mm.
And the other big takeaway from here is UAE Team Emirates, the team of Adam Yates, who I thought would be the one to challenge Remco at this race. They get 8th place. Doesn't sound that bad. 16 seconds back. Doesn't sound that bad, but it speeds this high. 16 seconds is a lot, especially in a stage race with only 2 uphill finishes and a bunch of sprint finishes. That's significant. They finish 1 spot above Astana and 1 second above Astana. Not fantastic. As Johan mentioned in the pre-show, they did beat Jumbo-Visma, who was here with, I thought, kind of not a ragtag team, just like a young team with, 1 sprinter, 1 climber, trying a lot of stuff out. But I was not impressed with the UAE, especially in their home race. I mean, you have to imagine the people who pay for this were a little disappointed with that showing.
Well, first of all, as we said in our last show, in the fact that they went without Tadej Pogačar, that's already a sign that, I'm still guessing the reasons why Pogačar didn't go to UAE. I mean, I think he doesn't want to have that pressure all the time, which is completely understandable. And also he had a problem with his stomach bug like 2 or 3 weeks before. So I think he was a bit uncertain. I think those uncertainties were answered in the Ruta del Sol. But they went with Adam Yates, already a winner of that race in the past, and with Jay Vine, So I think it really started off, everything that could go wrong went wrong. They got caught out in the crosswinds. Don't know what happened because there were some crashes at the start of stage one. And when you start off bad, man, then stage two, I think they were still shaken from the loss of stage one. And then on top of that, later we found out that Jay Vine was nursing a knee injury and had to abandon. So it didn't start off the best way. Later on they could fight back and win a couple of stages, but it's not easy to be the favorite team in your home country race and having to perform. I mean, you can't win every single time. And at the end of the day, I think they started off bad, but they could save whatever there was to save.
Yeah, and being down, let's just say Vine, maybe he wasn't very well on stage two. If he dropped out the next day, a 7-rider team and a team time trial, that's going to hurt you. So, maybe the 16 seconds back, we can forgive them that because they'd never particularly time trial focused team. And then one rider not feeling well will slow you down.
Yeah, well, I mean, they do have Brandon McNulty. They had Mikkel Björk. They had another strong time trialist, I think. So, I mean, they did have a strong team, but I mean, listen, 16 seconds, it's at the same time, it's a lot. And then on the other hand, one thing goes wrong and you're 10 seconds down. You miss a turn, whatever, I mean, it's it doesn't say a lot. I think it was more the fact that they were kind of defeated already on stage one that took the pressure a little bit off and had an impact on their performance.
Yeah, well, it gets better from here for them. They actually kind of recovered pretty well after stage two.
Let's get into stage three, one of the climbing stages. For comparison, what are these climbs like in the UAE versus what? I couldn't tell, and I didn't look at the distance or altitude, but obviously enough to break it up and have a breakaway stay off front. But I mean,
they're hard? They're hard climbs. I mean, like 20K long. This is just a stage 3 one. 20K long.
21 kilometers.
6% average. Finishes at 1,500 meters. So what's that? That's like over 4,000 feet.
Yeah.
So pretty serious climbs.
Yeah. No. These climbs are not easy. But then again, you see on stage 3, the stage which is won by the Colombian guy, Einer Rubio, his first win as a professional. Won on his birthday with a really gutsy move, I think, with 10K to go. But then if you look afterwards, it's 20, 25 riders together. It needs to be steep. It needs to be steep to have really separation. On a climb like this, it's 5, 6, 7%, really smooth pavement. A lot of riders stay together. You need to be really strong to get away from them. I mean, with all due respect, Rubio won because he was not one of the favorites, and he was, he didn't come from a breakaway. He attacked from the peloton, but since he was not one of the favorites, he got a gap, was not really, supervised, and could get his first win.
You just brought up something interesting that I was noticing watching UAE that made me think about the history of these cities they're racing around. These are brand new roads. This is not like racing in old Europe. A completely different kind of thing. I mean, these roads are probably less than 10 years old, right?
Yeah.
I just thought that was interesting. So fast speeds.
Yeah, so fast. I mean, these guys are big ringing, probably all of these climbs, and there's no climbs before them. So that makes it a lot faster, you have to imagine. UAE kind of tried to take control of it to put Evenepoel under pressure. Didn't work out. That's how Rubio got away, because UAE sent these riders to the front. They couldn't hold fast enough pace. And it's hard, if it's they're probably going close to 16 miles an hour on these climbs. And sort of control a pace like that is really difficult to do. Rubio gets away with a teammate. Really good attack, actually. He stays away for the win. Johan, I was thinking about you during the stage because Remco doesn't attack. It looked like maybe he could have, like with 2K to go. Everyone looked kind of punch drunk. I thought he could have burst away and kind of sealed the overall win. He just sits in. He comes in 14 seconds after Rubio with a 1 second gap on Adam Yates and Platt behind him, gets a little bit of a time bonus. It was kind of an impressive show of maturity.
Yeah, I think the two things that I take away from this race for Remco is that he keeps making progress. Stage 1 being one of the top favorites, he's the only one of those top favorites who doesn't get caught in the wind. And then on stage 3, he wins from a sprint, which he has never done before. And he himself said, I really feel like I got stronger because the way he went, there was nobody able to beat him, and he even got a little bit away. I mean, it may seem insignificant, maybe a few meters. But a guy like Adam Yates is really, really one of the best in the world on those kind of finishes. And for Remco to win that sprint, and he looked super, super powerful that day. So I think he has made progress compared to last year, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, Remco last year just storms away and probably crushes everyone. But that's riskier to do. He doesn't really need to take time there. So that was
last year, I think, Spencer, sorry to interrupt, but on a climb like this, I don't know if you would have stormed away. He obviously was really good in the Vuelta on some of these climbs and rode away. But you can't compare these climbs here, where it's gradual. It's the pavement is fine. I mean, on the wheel, there is a big advantage being on the wheel here. So you have to be really strong. And also, I think one of the things that I like about Remco is that he didn't he obviously learned his lesson from the race in Argentina.
Yeah, similar.
He did not do any useless, stupid moves. He raced when it mattered, and that's how he won. I mean, basically after stage one, he didn't have to attack. He just had to follow the best climbers. That was all he needed to do.
Who's counseling Remco? Like, to this maturity that you're talking about, these shifts, and it's got to be one of the hardest things to teach a young rider is to be patient, conserve. It's a long season, but who's working with Remco that you know of?
Well, I mean, I don't know. They have a bunch of specialists. They have mental coaches. They have directors there with a lot of experience. I mean, the general manager is arguably the one with the most experience of the whole peloton, Patrick Lefevre. I'm sure he doesn't coach Remco. And then on top of that, I think probably Remco's best coach is probably his dad. He was a professional cyclist, obviously not as talented as his son, but he knows a thing or two about bike racing too.
Well, let me ask you this, Johan. Do your kids listen to you?
No.
Okay. Neither does my daughter does not listen. My advice is the worst on the planet. So we shall see. For the sake of time, let's move forward a little bit faster here. And now we get into stage 4. There was 4 or 5 up in a sprint. Why don't you break that down for us a little bit, Spencer?
Yeah, so we're going to our sprint phase. We have 3 consecutive sprint finishes here. Things turn around for UAE. It was a really chaotic sprint finish. I mean, that's like the takeaway here. It was like total chaos, no real lead outs. Juan Sebastian Milano for UAE wins the stage really impressively over our Jumbo-Visma young rider Olav Koij, and then Sam Welsford, who's a really good rider for DSM. He's impressed me so far this year.
Yeah,
but Milano, I don't know if I've ever seen. He's a lead-out rider who now has won the last 2 World Tour sprints for UAE, who has in theory, star sprinter Pascal Ackermann. Johan, what's going on here with Milano? Like, this guy was a lead-out rider. Now he's winning sprints on his own, and he really saves the team's butts at this race. This is the only stage win up to this point, the only stage win they had in their home race.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's he's a fast rider. He's a sprinter himself. He was leading out Gaviria before when he was on UAE in the Giro, I think. Then last year he was leading out Ackermann on the last stage in the Vuelta, which he won. Not Ackermann, but Milano.
Yeah.
And here he was obviously the sprinter of the team, and he kind of came. I'm not going to say out of nowhere, but he could really position himself well, and the way he finished was quite impressive. So I think that was a huge relief for the management, for the sports director and the general manager of Team UAE Emirates to have that stage win. I mean, imagine them at that point. They're there without Pogačar. They're basically losing the race in stage 1. It could have been that they went home with nothing, no stage win and no win in the GC. So that was, I think that night, the general manager probably had a few good glasses of wine to celebrate that victory.
Can he go back to being a lead-out rider now, or is he just the team's second sprinter and he won't race with Ackermann anymore?
I mean, listen, I think at this point they have to pull the card Milano in the races, because Ackermann, I mean, with all due respect, this is not the Ackermann we know from when he was at Bora and dominating the stages in the Giro and getting the points jersey. So they have to go, whenever he's at a race, probably they're going to protect him and try to put him in good position to try to win stages.
Interesting. Well, I'll just go on to stage 5 then, so we get through this. Dylan Groenewegen wins. Another interest. I mean, all of these sprints, like none of these sprints were like the others. I think that was our 3rd sprint finish, and the podium was different on every sprint finish. Mm-hmm. No rider had finished in the top 3 twice. Groenewegen kind of expertly stole the lead out of Sam Bidden on Bora. Bora had a great lead out just for the wrong rider. Groenewegen starts ahead of Merlier and Cavendish in the wheel when those guys were in the wind. So he kind of easily holds them off. Gaviria was on the inside. thought looking pretty good. I know Johan loves Gaviria. You loved him in the Giro last year. It seemed like we picked him for every sprint stage, and then he actually never delivered. But he looked good here. I would keep an eye on him going forward.
He won a race already, yeah, Spencer. He won a sprint already in Argentina.
In San Juan, right? Yeah. And Sam Bennett gets third. I kind of had forgotten Bennett was at this race. It's actually, if you're saying it's not the same Pascal Ackermann, I'm kind of wondering, is this the same Sam Bennett?
It's too early. It's too early to say, in my opinion. He won 2 stages in Argentina already, Sam Bennett. I mean, 1 or maybe 2, but at least 1. I think here we see the same. The potential winners, it gets wider and wider. And whereas normally you had one sprinter with a really good team, now you have many sprinters with many good teams to lead them out. And it's really, I mean, here we see, the first 3 sprints, 3 different winners and 3 different podiums, as you say. I didn't pick up on that, but that's interesting to see.
It was almost like someone's shaking a snow globe and then just getting random results. Like Phil Bauhaus and Caleb Ewan are really good, and they finished 13th and 14th on this stage. And so it's a deep sprint field.
Well, and also, whatever. I mean, anything can go wrong. When something goes wrong in a sprint with 100, 150 meters to go, then most of the guys, the guys that go for the win, they sit up, and they don't bother anymore. So. But this is that. I mean, listen, this stage race was probably one of the best sprint fields we're going to see the whole year of riders being together. The only guy who was missing was Jakobsen.
Yeah,
all the others were there.
You think this is probably better than the Tour, right? Because a lot of these riders won't make, like Jumbo is probably not bringing a sprinter to the Tour unless we count Wout van Aert.
And UAE the same.
Yeah. So this was it's like the sprint world championships down there in the UAE this week.
Well, it makes sense if you look at the course and all these sprint finishes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Fast roads like we talked about. All right, let's move on. Stage 6. We see Tim Merlier come away with another win.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I kind of felt like, I felt like I was going insane at this point. Like another sprint win, and they're all getting another sprint stage. They're all getting mixed up in my head. But Merlier wins. I thought maybe, proved himself to be the dominant sprinter.
Very dominantly sprint. Yeah. I mean, one of the typical Tim Merlier sprints, he's won a stage like the same way in the Tour, and he's won a stage the same way in the Giro. Like going and really, there was no discussion. There was no discussion today. And I think was it Sam Bennett who was second today?
Yep.
But
I mean, my notes just say,
not even
Merlier
close.
wins. He is very fast. And that's all. My notes just say Merlier wins. He is very fast.
Well, I noticed too, he had kind of an inside shorter line, which puts you in jeopardy of getting pinched into the wall there, but it opened up for him.
Yeah.
It was impressive. Okay. And let's go on to stage 7. Adam Yates looking great. As you said earlier, Johan, he's one of the best in that scenario, right? What are your thoughts? And then, of course, Remco just covering the time and taking care of business.
Yeah. So should I just say that? Yeah, Yates finished 10 seconds ahead of Evenepoel on the stage. Looked really strong. Insignificant gap because Evenepoel went into the stage with such a large lead. He still wins by a minute. And then Luke Plapp finishes 6th, 54 seconds back. Pretty good showing from him. So he still holds on to his second place overall by a second. And then Adam Yates gets third. So good showing from Yates.
But obviously Team UAE went into the stage like with the conviction that they were going to give it all to win. And also, if you're in the situation with Adam Yates being on that kind of stage, on that kind of climb, as I said, one of the best in the world, it's highly likely you're going to get away with Evenepoel, right? And then if you are a minute down, it's probably a little bit easier to get the stage win. But here again, the team UAE prepared that attack really well, with Brandon McNulty being the last guy, really, making the big selection, and then and then have an attack. But at some point it was Adam Yates and Evenepoel and Sepp Kuss. Then Remco started to pull, which I think was okay, because he just needed to manage him getting to the top and not losing over a minute. When Adam Yates attacked, Remco had no answer at all. And you could see, in my opinion today, you could see that Remco didn't have a great day. He was all right, but he didn't have a great day. He was suffering more than I've seen him suffering. Personally, I think also that, it's perfectly justified. He's also still a bit heavier than he was, probably like 3 kilos more than what he was in the Vuelta. At least that's what I see from an optical point of view, but that's fine. He has the time to get in shape for the Giro. But I think here again, she showed maturity and, didn't panic. Adam Yates attacked really violently, you say, and Remco had no response at all. He didn't panic. He just looked at his power meter and kept his pace. And at the end, he only finished 10 seconds down. This is, again, a sign to me that, and I don't want to come across as a huge Remco fan. I mean, I am a Remco fan, of course, but, I want to stay neutral. But this is, again, a sign that he has been learning from his mistakes, and that instead of reacting, he didn't have to react, and he could just keep his pace and finally got to the finish. And he was spent. I was surprised. And after the finish, this was not like, okay, I've just done this here. Where are the microphones? Let me.
He was on the ground for a long time.
Yeah.
I did notice that.
Fine. He does not normally look that worn out, and I was surprised. I mean, this was live racing. He was really hurting on that.
Yeah, but I think he can be happy with the performance, with his form. And obviously, as I said, he didn't do this in this race. He didn't make the mistake he did in San Juan, where he made an attack from way too far out at altitude. But this was, and I'm sure he's going to agree with me, this was a stupid attack, like not necessary, but really useless. Like especially in your first race where you don't know exactly where your form is. He's learning, and yeah, I kind of liked what I saw from him.
And to Johan's point of the learning, he wins a stage race where he was outclimbed by Adam Yates. I mean, Yates put 7 seconds. If we just bundle the two climbs together, he lost 7 seconds to Adam Yates on those climbs, and then wins the GC by a minute, only having taken 16 seconds in the time trial, the team time trial. I mean, that's really impressive. Like, to just kind of pull, 46 seconds out of thin air on stage one, which is good racecraft, shows a lot of nuance and maturity in his racing that used to just be strength based.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll wrap up the coverage of the UAE Tour. But in your opinion, do you feel like, Johan, that Team UAE saved face with their performance and a couple of wins? I
think they saved.
And I'm comparing it to what you were saying on the last show, if people wanted to hear that, where you were questioning their choices of races.
I think they saved whatever there was to save. They won a bunch sprint and they won the decisive stage on the last day. It's always. I mean, if you win on the last day, that's another little bonus. If you would have won if Adam Yates would have won on stage 3 instead of the Colombian guy from Movistar, Aina Rubio, it's a stage win. But on the weekend, it's forgotten already. Now, at least they win the last stage. He gets on the podium for the final GC. All the important people of the team will be there. And everybody goes back with somewhat of a good feeling.
Yeah, it's like getting a birdie on 18. You just feel like a rock star, right?
That's I think personally for them, it's not just about result. At the end of the day, the Tour of UAE, in terms of sporting value, it's just any other race. But for them, it's an important race, and especially the bosses have to be happy. Right. And I think they were probably super pissed on day one. On day 2, they were still not happy. But at the end, they said, okay, this is bike racing. Everything can happen. But, we are we are still a factor, and we won the last stage, we won another stage. So I think they saved their face.
Okay. And one more thing that I was thinking about when watching Tour of UAE is, because you've even talked about it in the Tour de France, you might be in some terrible hotel that's 2 hours away. You don't know what you're going to get. And knowing that, these Middle Eastern sponsored teams are throwing money at things, do these riders get like a total VIP experience that's going to encourage them to go do more racing like this? Or is it pretty much standard?
It's in the Tour of UAE, everything, it's an easier race to organize also, because basically they decide wherever the stage will be, and they don't have to take into account which city is going to pay, and the hotels are super nice. I have no doubt about that. But other than but the teams have to go because it's a World Tour event, so you're obligated to go, right? Now some of them don't send their best riders because it's just another obligated event where you have to assist. But no, they don't get the VIP treatment. It's it's cycling. It's cycling, and I don't know now if it's RCS or ASO, but one of both. Either the company that owns the Giro or the company that owns the Tour, they are the organizers logistically. So they are hired by the UAE to set up this event in terms of, cycling specific things. So I think it's RCS, the Italians. So, I don't know. Personally, I don't think maybe Remco could be that he was kind of, I'm not sure, but I'm just saying this out loud now. Maybe it could be that he got some kind of incentive, like an appearance fee. Other than that, there's nobody there who has an appearance fee. They all went because they had to go, and obviously the sprinters will want to go because they know there's four opportunities to sprint, and that's it. It's just another race for the bulk of the whole peloton. It's just another World Tour race.
Okay. We've got more races to cover here. There's a lot going on around the world here. We'll start with, before we get into the UAE and Jumbo going back and forth already this season, let's go to France, where Alaphilippe pulls off a win. And I think this is his first win since his horrific injury, if you don't remember that one.
Yes, April of last year. Yeah.
Yeah, so I did not see this one, nor did I even know it was going on.
What, JB? You're not watching all the races we're talking about?
So I'm going to 100% lean on you guys, as if I don't do that enough on these shows. But what was your takeaway from that? Obviously, it's good to see him back on form.
It is. I did see the race, surprisingly. And he was, Alaphilippe was strong. It's also not the biggest field, but he went away on a climb with David Gaudu, top 5 in the Tour de France. The big hope of French cycling for a podium in the Tour eventually. So I think Alaphilippe wants, first of all, it's great to see him back on a good level, but I also think he wants to make a statement. Because I don't know if you've seen that. I'm pretty sure you've seen it, Spencer, in the media, but there's been pretty decent, harsh criticism from the team boss, Patrick Lefevere, on both Alaphilippe and on Casper Asgreen, for, saying, okay, they have huge contracts, but they haven't performed. I must imagine that doesn't really sit well with a guy like Alaphilippe. And so it's a smaller race, but he makes a statement, hey, I'm also here. It's not all about Remco. I'm still here, and I can still win.
We were at the end of last season, we were talking about, does Quick Step need to shift their efforts to a GC team? And so I could see what all the hype around Remco, what you're talking about with Alaphilippe.
Yeah, but also Patrick Lefevere has a way of motivating his riders, and He writes a column in one of the Belgian newspapers where sometimes he kind of criticizes. I mean, I'm sure there's always a meaning or some kind of motivation behind that. Listen, I have to say, it seems to work.
It seems, it's very
works.
effective.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, Alaphilippe, good win, not an important race, but a win is a win, and I think especially for his own morale, I think it's important that, because those two guys went with, I would say, probably 35 kilometers to go. They rode the two of them. They kept off a few other riders, like 4 or 5 riders. One of them was Quinn Simmons in there, who was up there also riding really strong. So yeah, I think he'll be happy with that win. It's a relief, like even if it's a small win, a win is a win, and winning is difficult everywhere.
Yeah, and the relationship, as you say, is so strained with Lefevre. I mean, I heard that he told him he could leave this offseason if he wanted to, which is, I mean, that's a kind of
I don't know about that. Listen, like him or not, Patrick is also obviously old school, but he knows how to get his stuff together. He's, he has been around for a long time. I know that all his sponsors are signed up until 2026. Sometimes he says too much what he thinks in the media. He doesn't care about that. So he knows what he's doing. I mean, I can only say, I get along with him really well, but there must be something he's doing right.
There tends to be a method to he kind of has this persona of just, like diarrhea of the mouth at times. He'll just say stuff like, why are you saying that? You don't need to say this. But there's often a method of the madness where you think about, he needs to sign support riders for Remco. Casper and Julian Alaphilippe are expensive riders. He's probably asking himself, is Julian Alaphilippe going to win another 3 world championships? Probably not. Like, good chance his best days are behind him. So
definitely, I'll add to that. This is an era where they're signing young talent and putting them right out there.
And also, he said also publicly, that he didn't expect, because I think one of the main frustrations of Patrick Lefevre is that he has these two big riders. I mean, Asgreen and Alaphilippe, winners of monuments, winners of big, huge races, world champion. They're not just under contract for this year, they're also under contract for next year. So he extended their contracts, not expecting that Remco would evolve so quickly into one of the top 3-4 riders in the world in Grand Tours. And as any other businessman, he needs to make sure that at the end of the month, all the contracts are paid, all the invoices are paid. And on top of that, already start to think, okay, I need to build a stronger team around this young guy I have here. And I can understand that. I mean, one of the things that it's a good rule of thumb, a good sign for a team. I'm talking about a cycling team here, but I'm pretty sure it's in a lot of teams also in the business world, where when you're a good boss, you're severe, you're strict, but you're respected, is when your staff stays on board for a very long time. And that team, the staff that's there, they are there since as long as I can remember. It takes something very special for someone to leave that team, including riders. I mean, even Mark Cavendish last year, if they would have at the last moment giving him some kind of compromise, they didn't even make him an offer, because he was not in their plans. And you could say, okay, well, that's a huge lack of respect towards a guy who has come here. He won 4 stages in the Tour. But still, I can tell you, Mark Cavendish has no bad word to say about Patrick Lefevre. And if they would have given him the opportunity to stay on a decent contract, not the top contract he could get, but a decent contract, I'm sure he would have stayed.
All right, let's move on now. I'm going to hold off on talking about Vingegaard and his incredible showing there. Let's jump now to the Omloop. And Spencer, why don't you break down how that went down for those who did not see it?
Probably the biggest race of the weekend, even though we're saving the best for last. But this is traditionally like the beginning of the Cobble Classic season. It's the first one-day classic in Belgium on some sort of cobblestones. Johan, am I incorrect in remembering that this tends to be contested out of a bunch sprint? Is that correct? No. This is
normally
Kuurne is traditionally
Kuurne, yes. Kuurne, Bristol, Kuurne, yeah.
So with this is Dylan van Baarle, who won last year Paris-Roubaix for Ineos, moved over to Jumbo in the offseason, making Jumbo already the best classics team even better. He wins this race with a really impressive solo attack, 20 seconds ahead of your up-and-comer, Arnaud Delis, Johan, and then his teammate Christophe Laporte gets third.
Mm-hmm.
It really, like the winning move came with 38K to go. That's when Van Baarle got into a move. They were able to, and then Jumbo's squeezing behind. It's like classic, the squeeze technique where you're marking and killing moves, trying to go up to the breakaway. You have a guy in the breakaway. So I'm getting my days confused. Jumbo's been too dominant. You have a guy in the breakaway. It's perfect. It's textbook. And then Van Baarle just like one by one dropped everyone, win solo. Really good move. There was like a point with 100K to go where Jumbo blows the race up. There's a 14 rider front group and they have 6 riders in that 14 rider group. I mean, that's a lot of strength. And it eventually came back together, but I thought that move is important because it put everyone on the back foot. There was, they were dominant, but there were odd things like with 60K to go. There was a sharp turn. Then Baarle's at the back.
That was at the Molen. That was at the, it was, I know. It was just before a couple section. He kind of lost positions. He got squeezed in but there you see how strong he was. In no time he was back at the front. I mean, not particularly on that sector, but probably on the next difficulty, he was already back on the front. Van Baarle was incredibly strong yesterday. First race of the season, let's not forget. Also, that's. I mean, normally here you also see where things have changed. Like it would be unimaginable in the past to say, okay, Omloop is going to be my first race. What? You need to have done 2 little stage races in the south of France or in Spain to get in the rhythm. To be ready for that race. No. They know they're ready, and they race. And I think for Van Baarle, it is yesterday that was a big statement. Like in his new team, in his new environment, say, hey, guys, this is not just about Wout van Aert. I'm here and I can do it too. So it's going to be interesting to see later on when the big classics with like Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix. And Gent-Wevelgem come across, then how are they going to race? Is it going to be one leader with Van Baarle as the second leader, like sub leader, or both of them are going to have equal position in the team? That's going to be interesting. But one thing is sure, after yesterday's race and even more so after today's race, Jumbo-Visma as a spring cobbled classic team, they are scary strong. And this is still without Van Aert.
Yeah, they don't even have their best rider yet. It's ridiculous. And interesting thing about Arnaud Delis as well, he crashed maybe 58K to go, right after Van Baarle had been tailed off the back. He's way off the back, has to chase back on and get second. So the guy who gets first had to chase back on.
He was incredibly strong yesterday. There's certain details, like, for example, the Mur de Grammont, Arnaud Delis did this on the big chain ring. I mean, what? Like the Mur of Gerardsbergen, that's like, there's no way you can do this on the main. Okay, in their favor, they do have obviously, bigger sprockets in the back now, but still, on the big chain ring, that's like incredible power. And then also his data from the sprint. He was, let's not forget, he was in a little group with 4 guys, had been doing a lot of work, and at the moment they're about to get caught, he goes again and wins that sprint dominantly. That guy has some really big power.
And this was essentially the best he could do. With Laporte back there, he would have had to. It would be like Cancellara-esque, like reel in Van Baarle, drop him win the sprint. That would be unlikely. So a second place behind that Jumbo team, really good result for him.
And especially after everything that happened with him also, he was impressive. And I spoke with somebody who did an interview this week with him. When he went to his place in Wallonie, from the same little town as Philippe Gilbert, by the way. There's a picture out there somewhere where Philippe Gilbert is world champion, and as a little small child, Arnaud Delis there happy with his signature. And so the guy who interviewed him said, he was so impressed with the confidence of Arnaud Delis, the confidence he has in himself. He really, believes in himself, knows that he's strong, and that, when he has the team support around him and they can bring him to a position in the final, that he can basically win, not mountain stages, but any other race.
I'll remind our listeners to go listen to the Up and Comer show if you have not. The big takeaway from that was Johan saying, if you follow one name on this list for this season, it was Arnaud Delis, who already has a few wins.
Mm-hmm.
The season's just getting going.
I think three.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Now let's talk about, and we'll get to Vingegaard last, but now let's talk about Kuurne, Brussels, Kuurne, where I love it when you see a small breakaway with two teammates. And when they do what they're supposed to do, right? It's classic racing when they attack, and then when it gets caught, the other one attacks. It's just, that's like, I think, some of my favorite kind of racing to see. It's just textbook attacks. So Spencer, why don't you go into more detail on that?
Yeah, this was a textbook race, and this one is normally a sprint, like a reduced sprint. Like Fabio Jakobsen probably would have been the betting favorite for this race. It's a hard classic race, but it's flat for like the last, 30K, maybe even longer than that. So groups tend to come back together.
The last 40K, yeah.
So Jumbo, it was like deja vu. 96K to go. They come to the front. They look like a swarm of bees up there. Jack up the pace. Really clever. Around like 84K to go. They're on the front on a cobble climb. That they have everyone on their team is at the front. The third or fourth guy just sits up just to see what would happen. Kind of launches two of their riders up the road. Matej Motoric and a few others like Tim Wellens can bridge up there. But really, that was the winning move right there. They got enough of a gap. Delis was getting dropped at the time, really impressively, caught back on and contested the sprint. But it was chaos. It was a perfect time to do this. There really wasn't a concerted chase. Like Lotto had one guy in the front felt like 20K, not really putting up any resistance. It was Nathan Van Hooydonk for Jumbo, and then Tej Benoot, two really strong riders with Tim Wellens, Matej Motoric, and Taco Vanderhoorn. Maybe one other rider. Am I missing one, Johan?
No. Van der Hoorn was part of a breakaway. He was the only one who could, stayed with those four guys.
Yeah, and like that's a strong group. You're probably not going to be able to nail them back with one or two people on the front. Yeah. Never really looked like they were going to get reeled in. And then, as JB said, two Jumbo riders. No other team has more than one rider in this move. We're going to see the classic 1-2. Which is exactly what we saw. Van Hooydonk would attack as soon as he was reeled in. Benoot would attack over and over again. They get Benoot off the front. And then kind of impressively, Nathan Van Hooydonk was so strong. He was sprinting behind for second place, but making sure not to sprint so fast to catch Benoot. And he was so strong that he could like meter his effort and still beat Matej Motoric, who's a really good rider for the second place sprint. Meaning that over the two races, there's 6 possible podium positions. Jumbo got 4 of them.
And then Laporte won the sprint of the bunch.
Yeah, Laporte gets 6 for the bunch sprint. Arnaud Delis gets 7. So kind of a flip-flop of the sprint there from the day before. So, Laporte, just to have Laporte as the one in the wings, marking moves from behind, just shows how, and he would be a leader on most other teams. Shows.
And one of the things, and there you can actually see also how this team, new riders that get to that team kind of make a step up. I've had details of people who went to, interview Van Aert, and they went to the Teide, to the volcano here in Canarian Islands. the amount of work that goes into that team, the amount of scientists that are present at training camps. Laporte is a different rider since he's on Jumbo-Visma. He was on Cofidis. He was a good rider, but nothing. I mean, I'm not going to say nothing special. I mean, he won races, but he's a dominant rider now. One rider I also saw on the weekend, a part of Van Baarle, a new rider on Jumbo-Visma, who we're going to see a lot in the Spring Classics, is Jan Tratnik. Comes from Bahrain, I guess. Yeah, he comes from Bahrain. Came to the team at the request of Primož Roglic, Slovenian guy. But he's part of this little coupled classic team, and he was impressive in both races. Was instrumental actually for both of the decisive moves. And then in the other race in Galicia, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. There's another rider, a new rider that came to the team, who's also upped his game a level and is now on a different level. I mean, this team does things right. They have put resources aside for anything you can think about, every single detail that is related to improving in a scientific way, whether it's equipment, nutrition, training, clothing, whatever. They have it covered. And you can see that riders coming from other teams benefit from that hugely.
One question I have for JB and Johan, is this too many good, how does this work later in the classic season? You have Dylan Van Baarle, Tej Benoot, Christophe Laporte, and then you also have Wout van Aert. How do they divide this up and keep everyone happy? Are we going towards domination, or is this like a train wreck waiting to happen later in the spring?
JB, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, just based on what we just talked about, it worked because they were all aligned. In the breakaway, either I'm going to win or you're going to win, but Jumbo has to win, right?
Yeah.
And you talk about Laporte, he's usually a front runner, and he took his role to control the front of the peloton. So if they're aligned on that, I don't care who wins as long as we win, which is easier said than done, then they're in good shape.
Yeah.
And they seem to have that mindset, but what do you think, Johan?
Well, we'll see now when Van Aert comes into the game, right? But Spencer, to answer your question, what you have to think also is, if you have one of the 2-3 strongest riders on that type of races, which Van Aert is, together with Van der Poel and Pidcock maybe at some point, or Van Baarle.
Or Pogačar.
Pogačar. Say Pogačar.
Yeah.
If you have one leader, then other teams, they put all the responsibility into your camp. And that whatever happens, breakaways, you have to cover it. You have to control it. You have to ride all day. Having these different cards to play makes it actually easier on the team, because whoever is in a breakaway, from after halfway the race or in the final with 50, 60K to go, whether it's Van Baarle or Tej Benoot or Laporte or even Tratnik, whatever, they could say, hey, we're fine. We don't have to. If you have only one rider that you ride for, that's your only option. There's only one strategy. You ride, and then hope that nobody can follow your leader. And most of the time, there's one or two guys who can follow, and then you're still up there with chances for a podium. But it makes me think of Quick-Step Mapei in the past, where sometimes riders who were not the strongest riders of their team won, for example, Paris-Roubaix. A guy like Niki Terpstra, for example, won Paris-Roubaix being on Quick-Step. Long time ago in George's years, a guy like Servais Knaven won Paris-Roubaix, and he was the fourth strongest of the team. The thing was that all those four riders were in the final.
Yeah. It's like the Sten de Volder effect, where he gets 2 Flanders wins because he's on Quick-Step.
Yeah.
And Tom Boonen's there. If he's a team leader, he probably wins 0 Flanders. Yeah. So it's like Laporte oddly has better odds of winning on the stacked team than he did by himself.
Absolutely. He has better chances of winning Flanders or Roubaix or Gent-Wevelgem or whatever than being the sole leader of, for example, Cofidis, where he was before.
So, is a guy like Wout van Aert going to be comfortable and sit there and say, hey, you're all watching me. They're up the road and just sit back? Can he do that? Because he's so talented.
He can. Listen, being so good as Van Aert and these other super talents like Van der Poel or Pogačar, it's not easy. It's not easy being the favorite and having to deliver. Of course, Van Aert, he already has won a lot of good races, right? He already won a monument, which is Milan-San Remo, but he wants at some point to win either Flanders or Roubaix or both in his career. And he also knows that the more every year that passes, it's a year lost, right? And he will, if he wins, it's going to be because he is with the move of the best riders in the race. When the big favorites go, he's not going to be able to take advantage of some kind of attack in between two little climbs that nobody pays attention, and before they know it, they have 30 seconds. That's not going to happen with Van Aert. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think Van Aert's position basically remains the same. He's the leader, and he's going to win those races when he's the strongest and when the big favorites race against each other, and he's the best of those. But then again, first of all, Van Aert, he's a big champion. He already has a palmarès that almost nobody can say. And, he probably prefers to be on a team where if he doesn't win, a teammate wins, rather than for example, his rival of 10 years, Mathieu van der Poel. He would prefer that the teammate wins.
And I'm being a little hyperbolic. We should remember, let's say the last 30K of Flanders or Roubaix, 2 or 3 of these guys could be taken out by just bad luck. You miss a split, you have a flat, you have a crash. So, they could look like an endless supply of contenders, but in reality, maybe you just have Laporte. Maybe you just have, maybe you just have Van Barle. Like if you have one guy left in the last 20K, that's pretty good, just because the attrition rate is so high at those big classics.
All right, as if we have not talked about Jumbo-Visma enough on this show, we go to the O Gran Camiño. All right, and the Vingegaard show was on. We got a good look at Pogačar just crushing people. Break this down for us. What the destruction, Spencer?
So it's 4-stage race with one-time trial. It was reduced to a 3-stage race with one-time trial. Stage 1 was canceled mid-stage because of a snowstorm. Kind of amazing to watch, actually. It was pretty intense snowstorm. Yeah. But stage 2 and Vingegaard, the big thing that happened on stage 1, Vingegaard wins the intermediate sprint. So you're thinking, wow, this is like unusual, and he's ready to go. Comes out stage 2. I think Johan was teasing a newcomer. I assume it's Attila Valter. Who was setting really, really a hard pace. Vingegaard, when he attacked, it was like he was breathing through his nose when everyone else was breathing through his mouth in the group. He attacks and just destroys everybody. It looked like Pogačar did a week ago or 2 weeks ago. And it's a stage race. Remember, it's a short stage race, so time should be important. He's sitting up, easily going over the line, not at all concerned about time. Same thing happened the next day. Wins the time trial, beats Rowan Dennis, which shows you he's in really good time trial form right now. And it's a 3-stage race, and he won it by, I think, over 2 minutes in the GC. So really no one was even close to challenging him. Jumbo looked amazing. It's funny because last week we were saying Jumbo hasn't even really raced yet. They're just at training camp. Well, they kind of answered us, and now they look like the dominant team, and UAE's on the back foot. Obviously that's absurd, but it can look like that. Amazing.
It's, I'm pretty sure it's unintentional, but it's like, Vingegaard wants to answer the show of the Pogačar show of Ruta del Sol. He said, okay, I'm here. I'm also in great shape. I'm also going to win 3 stages and the GC. which is the same that Pogačar did. I mean, I personally think that Vingegaard is he got the confidence now of being the Tour de France winner, which I think last year he discovered during the month of July. Now he starts the season with that confidence and with a team completely behind him. Already you could see from the off season that the choices in the program are that Primož Roglič, who was their leader until the start of the Tour de France last year for the Tour, chooses the Giro as his main objective, and the whole team goes for one leader at the Tour de France in Vingegaard. They, as we said last week, they waited for a long time to start racing these big guys, but man, they were at some point I think they were in 28th position in the team classification. Like if you take there was a bunch of second level teams in front of them. Well, I'm curious to see the ranking after this weekend. It's going to be completely different. But yeah, you're right. I was talking about Attila Valter. Amazing performance, leading out Jonas Vingegaard on those climb stages. And here you see again, this is a guy. He was pink jersey in the Giro, I think, at some point when Bernal won 2 years ago.
Yes, yeah.
He was on Groupama FDG. I think it's his fourth year professional, but yet he just discovered for the first time in his career altitude training. He had never gone to an altitude training before. So, the guys who come from other teams, they open their eyes wide and they say, "What the hell is going on here? This is science fiction, But it's the way to go." And I was impressed with this guy's performance and the way he was leading out Vingegaard, because that particular stage he let him out. He even finished third on the stage, and it was a hard climb at the end.
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned that about altitude. I think Laporte said the same thing. He said if he wanted to do altitude training at Cofidis, he had to fly himself to the Canary Islands, book himself a hotel, and Jumbo just sets you up in any altitude camp you want to do all year long. So they clearly, maybe they just have more money, so it makes them look
They do
smarter,
have more money.
But yeah,
they do have more money, but
good.
But you know what? I mean, listen, with all due respect, but a team like Groupama, FDG, they have a lot of money too. Those are like two big companies behind it, Groupama and FDG. They've been around forever, and they have a huge budget, and not at all in comparison with their performance and their results. And a guy like this Hungarian champion, Attila Valter, first time he does an altitude camp.
I don't think we're breaking any news if we say maybe the French cycling establishment isn't on the cutting edge of training methodologies.
Johan was very vocal about the state of French cycling last year on some episodes. If you didn't miss that, a lot of
they have at some point they have been. There was. I mean, back in the when in the time of Laurent Fignon, especially Laurent Fignon, it was Renault Renault, and then Système U, I think. Their team director Cyril Guimard, he was like, they had these amazing time trial bikes for that time, amazing handlebars, special saddles which were then banned. They were always at the forefront of technology, but nowadays it seems like they obviously have good equipment, but they're not up to date with their approach.
No, I mean we could do a spin-off podcast, our French cycling podcast, but those big companies probably they just have guaranteed sponsorship year after year. There's not the need to innovate, maybe.
Look, I mean, it's very simple, Spencer. You take the three biggest teams: Groupama, France-Ardèche, the Jumbo, for we're going to call them FDG because they've been around forever. Cofidis, who has been around forever, and AG2R, who has been around forever. Obviously they have to have some kind of results, but that sponsorship is actually never into question. they are there. These companies have identified with cycling, and the way I see it is that the not the riders so much, some of them, but more the management and the staff, they become employees. They become employees. That's their job. They're there for 20 years, 25 years. Look at Marc Madiot. He's there since 96. 96. Vincent Lavenue, the manager of AG2R, he's there since mid-90s, early 90s. Cofidis has been around forever. And I think that the balance of, the sponsoring, but that, the pressure of having to perform, I think that's not in balance. And that's one of the reasons, in my opinion, why they're not so interested in novelties.
Interesting take. Now look for the Twitter wars with Johan coming this week.
Well, I mean, I just had a good one, based on my comments of our last podcast, where I was critical of the UAE team management, and then a Belgian journalist, really established journalist, had some harsh words for those comments, and I could not sit just back in my sofa and not reply. So it was an entertaining weekend, I have to say.
Yeah. One other question I had, I don't think I've asked this before, but again, we always tend to, on this show and cycling in general, you focus about the Grand Tours, especially Tour de France. Do these top GC guys intentionally, because it seems that way, try to avoid each other early in the season and do different races? You don't see the showdown early season among the top contenders. I don't know if that's intentional or it's just the way they do in scheduling, or is there any intent behind that to not have them face off early?
Yeah, well, I think we would have to see, especially if you talk about the Tour de France, what their leading up program is. I can already sense that the program of Jonas Vingegaard and Pogačar is going to be completely different, because Pogačar is probably going to ride the Tour of Slovenia, which means no Dauphiné, and then I think Vingegaard is going to go for the Dauphiné again. It worked pretty well, but initially they were scheduled to do. Vingegaard had announced to do Paris-Nice, and Pogačar had scheduled to do Tirreno Adriatico like he usually does, and he has changed that. So he now goes to Paris-Nice. So it's not that they're avoiding each other, because Pogačar knew that Vingegaard was going, and he chose Paris-Nice in last instance.
I think he's in the next show.
We want to see the showdown, because my other question was, and you probably don't even have an answer, but when you saw Pogačar dominate, you saw Vingegaard dominate already this month. My question is, who looks better? But I don't think there's an answer. They both look great.
You can't say. You can't say, because also you have to see the competition, right?
Right.
If you look at it like purely statistically, I would say Pogačar won against stronger riders. Vingegaard won against, with all due respect, Ruben Guerreiro, great rider, but he's not a Tour de France contender. And Enric Mas is. But yeah, it's difficult to say.
Yeah.
And again, I think it's more for their mind and their ego. It doesn't really matter who's a bit stronger now than the other. In my opinion, it doesn't really matter. But they want to be up there. They want, okay, you show me this. Okay, I can do that. I'm gonna, I'm also gonna win a few stages. So listen, it's great for us fans.
It is great. And on that note, I think we'll wrap it up, unless you guys had some other parting thought you were dying to share. I think we covered a lot.
I'm ready for Paris-Nice next week. And I think this is going to be, we're converging on a fantastic version of Paris-Nice.
And also for our Spanish speaking fans and followers and audience, tomorrow we are back with La Movida tomorrow afternoon.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks, guys. We appreciate it. I appreciate your time. Our listeners certainly appreciate you guys breaking all this down, giving your input. You can always write to us, themove@wedo.team. I'll get those. And I always check out the comments on YouTube. If you prefer to watch the show, you can leave comments there. Thanks, guys. And I'd say have a good night for you, Johan. And for Spencer and I, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.